Capitulum XXXVI.1 Roma Aeterna Palatium et Capitolium versus primus usque adversum 57. Urbs Roma in ripa Tiberis fluminis sita est, vigindi milia passuum a mari. The city of Rome is located on the bank of the Tiber River, 20,000 of paces from the sea, which is to say 20 miles from the sea. Hoc loco flumen facile transitur. In this place the river is easily crossed, et coles propinqui bene muniri possunt, and the nearby hills can be easily fortified, or can be well fortified rather. Facile, easily, bene, well, both of which are adverbs. Moenia Romana antiqua septem coles sive montes complectuntur. The old Roman walls encompass, surround 7 hills or mountains, quorum haec sunt nomina, of which these are the names: Palatium, Capitolium, Aventinus, Caelius, Esquilae, Viminalis, Quirinalis. A colle Quirinali et a monte Capitolino usque ad Tiberim flumen campus Martius patet. From the Quirinal hill and from the Capitoline mount all the way to the Tiber river, the Campus Martius, Mars field, is open, patet. Palatium primum munitum est, sed ea moenia quadrata, quibus Romulus primus rex Romanorum Palatium munivisse dicitur, iam pridem perierunt. The Palatine was fortified first, but those square walls, or four-sided walls, with which Romulus, or by which Romulus, the first king of the Romans, is said to have fortified the Palatine, have perished, or did perish, perierunt, long ago, iam pridem, long before, long ago. Neque ulla casa restat ex illa urbe antiquissima, and no shack, no tiny house remains from that extremely old city, quea forma moenium Roma quadrata appellabatur, which from the shape of its walls was called square Rome. Praeter casam Romuli stramento tectam, besides the casa, the little house of Romulus, covered with thatch. Postea Romani nobilissimi in palatio habitaverunt. Later, afterwards, extremely distinguished Romans lived on the Palatine hill in Palatio. Ibique post Iulii Caesaris aetatem, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, aliique principes Romani, domos magnificas sibi edificaverunt. And there, after the time of Julius Caesar, Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, and other Roman principes, that is essentially the emperors, other Roman leaders, built for themselves magnificent houses. Omnium vero magnificentissima est domus illa a Domitiano principe in colle Palatino edificata, quae vocatur domus Augustana. But the most magnificent house of all is that, or the most magnificent house of all is that house built by the Emperor Domitian on the Palatine Hill, which is called the Augustana house. Ea Capitolii pars, quae spectat ad septentriones, ardua atque muris firmis munita arx dicitur. That part of the Capitoline hill which looks to the north is steep and fortified with strong walls. Not is steep, but just steep and fortified with strong walls in apposition to Ea pars, is called the arx, or the citadel. Nec vero arx nomen huius montis proprium est, but the word or the name arx is not peculiar or unique to this mountain. Nam alii quoque montes ardui natura et opere muniti arces dicuntur, ut summum ianiculum quod trans Tiberim situm est. For other steep hills or mountains also are called arches and citadels. Other arduous, steep, lofty mountains and fortified by nature and by human ingenuity, opere. As, for instance, the pinnacle, the top, the summum ianiculum, which is located across the Tiber. Locus in Capitolio maxime arduus appellatur saxum Tarpeium, de quo olim homines scelesti supplicii causa precipitabantur. The place on the Capitoline, a place on the Capitoline especially, or the most lofty, is called the Tarpeian rock, from which, or down from which, in olden times, formerly, wicked men were cast headlong, precipitabantur, imperfect tense, passive voice, for the sake of punishment, or capital punishment. In Monte Capitolino, qui preceteris sacer habetur, multos sunt edificia sacra. On the Capitoline Mount, which is held to be sacred beyond the rest of the hills or mountains of Rome, are many sacred buildings. Quorum clarissimum est templum Iovis optimi maximi, of which the most famous, the most important, is the temple of Jupiter, the greatest, or the best and the greatest. Hoc templum primum edificavit Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, septimus et ultimus rex Romanorum. Lucius Tarquinius the Proud first built this temple. Lucius Tarquinius the Proud, who was the seventh and final and last king of the Romans. Ille vero cum nondum sacra viset novum templum Roma expulsus est a Lucio Junio Bruto, atque pro rege duo consules populo Romano prepositi sunt. But that guy, although perhaps when he had not yet consecrated the new temple sacra viset, pluperfect subjunctive, he was expelled from Rome by Lucius Junius Brutus, and in place of a king or the king, two consuls were set in charge of the Roman people. Non rex igitur, sed consul Romanus, hoc templum Augustum Iovi optimo maximo, summo Deo, populi Romani, et Iunoni et Minervae, duabus maximis deabus consecravit. So not a king, but a Roman consul consecrated this distinguished temple to Jupiter, the best and the greatest, the supreme, the chief god of the Roman people, unto Juno, unto Minerva, the two most important goddesses. Deinde idem templum iterum et tertium sacratum est, cum post incendia refectum esset. Then the same temple was consecrated a second and a third time when it had been, after it was, since it was rebuilt after fires, or when it was rebuilt after fires. Pluperfect subjunctive, passive voice. So we should say refectum esset, antecedent to the main verb. First you do the rebuilding, then you do the consecrating. When it had been rebuilt after fires, then it was consecrated a second time, and indeed a third time. Postremo Domitianus, templum Iovis Capitolini, incendio consumtum, refecit. Finally Domitian rebuilt the temple of Capitoline Jupiter when it had been, having been consumed by, perfect passive participle, by a fire. Actantis divitiis exornavit, ut nihil magnificentius fieri posset. And he decorated it with such great wealth, riches, that nothing could have been more magnificent. Auro et gemmis splendet tectum. The roof shines with gold and jewels. Quod plurimis columnis a marmore pulcherrimo factis sustinetur, which is held up by a very great many columns made out of the most beautiful marble. Intus in cella post fores auro opertas, ingen simulacrum Iovis in alta sede sedentis positum est. Within, in the small space or in the chamber behind double doors covered opertas with gold, was placed, positum est, a huge likeness, a huge statue of Jupiter sitting on a lofty seat. Ad hoc templum imperator Victor post triumphum ascendet. To this temple, the victorious general, or a victorious general, goes up after his triumph, this procession through Rome, ut Iovi optimo maximo sacrificium faciat, to do sacrifice, to make a sacrifice to Jupiter, the best and greatest, dum duces hostium, qui in triumpho ante curum imperatoris ducti sunt, ad supplicium traduntur, while the leaders of the enemies who were led in the triumph in front of the chariot of the general are handed over for punishment, and indeed for capital punishment. In summa arce templum iononis monete situm est, in conumi e metallis preciosis, auro, argento, aere, non aere, sed aere, efficiuntur, atque imaginibus imprimuntur. On the very top of the arcs of this fortified, lofty area is located the temple of Juno Moneta, in which coins are made out of precious metals, e metallis preciosis, precious metals in apposition out of gold, silver, and bronze. Atque imaginimus imprimuntur, and they are pressed with images, with likenesses. In infimo Capitolio est tabularium. At the base of the Capitoline, or in the lowest part of the Capitoline, is the tabularium. That is, it est amplum edificium, that is a large building, amplum edificium, in quo tabulae et litere publicae servantur, in which tablets, records of some kind, and public documents are preserved.